Well, here we are in the end of the year of the, where the sun goes. Anyway, I got up this morning and I thought, well, good time to tell a story, I guess. But tried to talk about hunting and my upbringing. We ate a lot of the deer just lived just outside, so I like to look out for them. Anyway, the way we were raised, we had things. It wasn't that we were without, but we supplemented a lot of our diet with wild meats, fish, and deer. And I didn't go hunting with my dad for years. It was he and his Marine buddy would go out and hunt, and listening to war stories when I was young, I realized war was not a place I wanted to be. Those men talked about Korea and the Pacific, and it was years after, and they would tell stories, and they were scared, and those were men I looked up to. And my dad, he hunted with this guy, and but my dad and I, we fished, and we'd get mushrooms when we lived in Oregon. We'd go hunting mushrooms and things, berries, cherries, and all of the fruits. And it was much later, after we had moved to Montana, that I started to go hunting. And I just basically liked walking in the woods myself. But my dad, we were going to get meat. I'm making moccasins today. They're a lot of little work. Anyway, it was later in my life, and like I said, I liked going and just looking. But then all of a sudden, a gun was put into the equation, and so some of these terms I'm going to use, you may not have ever heard them, but the locals will have. And so we were in Montana at the Crow Reservation, and it was in August. It was before I was going to go to boarding school, and they decided to take me out and up to what we call the Little Mountain. My sister-in-law at the time was with us, so we drove to meet the rancher that was going to take us up to the Little Mountain, because we didn't have the vehicles at the time. There was, four-wheel drives were hard to come by. Anyway, we met the rancher, and there wasn't enough room for us in the cab, so my sister-in-law and I got thrown in the back of the truck, and we bounced our way into the back country. And gosh, they threw me out of the truck up on the top of the Little Mountain, and I was amazed at the countryside that you could see. You could see up into the Dry Head overlook, where in the Pryor Mountains into the Bighorn. You could see over into the Bighorn Mountains, into the Garben Basin, and then to the other direction you could see clear up into the Snowies, and the mountains that I used to go through to round up, and the Bull Mountains. you could see, I think, down to the Wolf Mountains, down into the Lodge Grass area. Anyway, it was spectacular up there. And I was expected to go hunting, and the rancher was showing some of these different locations under trees up there, and there were these little piles of rocks there. And he would tell us that this is where the natives went to go after the Battle of the Little Bighorn to make more arrowheads. And these were little piles of those flakes. And I was I was a kid, you know. I was just a kid. I was looking at the ground, and so they said, well, they thought there might be some deer right over this one, to this one timber place. So I grabbed my rifle and I went over there, and my heart was pumping and the adrenaline was pumping, and you know, I often thought about some of the hunters that would sit in the east, you know, in the east coast, in these orchards or in these different forests of oak, and they were so patient. But I was up on the prairie, and once a deer breaks out of the forest into the prairie, it's, you know, it's an incredible amount of struggle to go find that deer. So once I got into this one location, and sure enough, I jumped these deer. And instead of sitting down, being calm and patient, I had the image of, you know, riding along on a horse with a lance and a buffalo, and I was going to hit the, you know, I took off running, chasing the deer, and it was an incredible amount of adrenaline, and I didn't expect that. The body just did what it did, and then you know, I shot the deer, and I then came to this moment of, you know, what do you do next, you know, and everything in my upbringing told me, you know, this is what you do. And so, you know, I took the last breath of that deer, and I said we'd walk together, and I did that for all of the deer. In doing some of these hunting things, there's in the way I saw it after I finally started to calm down and realize, you know, what I was doing. And harvesting the deer was a tragedy for me at a sense, because it took away, you know, just wandering into the forest, into, you know, becoming something different than the forest. So I then went off to boarding school as I was, you know, and yeah, I got disconnected from the deer. I never got to butcher the deer. I never until I came home did I get to eat the deer, and that bothered me considerably, because it was my responsibility. So as I matured in hunting, I started to realize that these moments we share with these animals, you know, we join with them. And it's a moment, as I understood it later, is that you to go to the forest and the deer will then give itself to you. And that's called harvesting the deer. But if you run out into the group like I did, and you just start shooting, that's along the lines of murder, and I didn't want to do that. But the third actual one that I felt was completely out of the question was to be up in a tree. and shoot the deer without any chance of the deer knowing you. That's an assassin. So I always allowed the animal, and it always broke down to, and I'm a terrible shot. I miss a lot. So everybody sort of, I felt it was even because I always let the deer take off. And if it stopped and looked at me, that was the moment. And we harvested the deer. So as I look back and I think about some of these experiences, you know, in the environment, on how do we become a better hunter? How do we become a better environmentalist? There's some things in your heart, and there's some things you gotta learn. And so as we go through time together, looking at how the environment is changing, we need to change with it. And I quit hunting 40 years ago. I went back to wandering in the forest. It was a better feeling for me. Anyway, I was just going to share this story because I had a moment thinking about my sister-in-law in the back of that pickup truck, and that brought that story forward. Enjoy yourselves and share stories. This is a time of storytelling.